When was the last time you cried this much publicly? Or been
Oh, fuck, I am just so sick of crying in public. Believe me, you have no fucking idea. I'm turning into that old weepy man that everyone avoids at Thanksgiving dinner. Don't talk to Grandpa, he's just gonna cry.
It's nice to see you again from last night.
My pleasure. My pleasure to be here again.
It's, I haven't been able to be on stage with you in Toronto, but also watching from the audience in Los Angeles. You can learn a lot about yourself when you're writing a memoir, but to then go out on the road like this and have audience talk to you and different people interview you on stage, some you know better than others. I just wonder, now that you're done this leg, how much have you learned about yourself and this experience putting the two together?
Well, that's a really good question. I had an incredible amount of anxiety before doing this thing. 2 days before the first gig, I had a major freak out.
In New York?
No, I was in Toronto
Yeah.
still before I flew to New York. And I woke up at 4 in the morning and I was like, what the fuck? I haven't even checked the lighting plots. Like, do we have lights? I mean, who's providing the sound? I mean, blah, blah, blah. I had this list of technical things. It was just all pure anxiety, pure midnight crazies. And I wrote Chris Fussell, our production manager, and at 4 in the morning, I wrote this whole litany of questions for him and sent it off. And of course, him being the wonderful pro that he is, he wrote me this beautiful note. Yeah, of course, all of that is done, and here's the plots, and this is what's happening. And, you know, he just lowered my anxiety. My shoulders went from here to here. But when I got to New York and was getting ready to go to the venue, all these thoughts were coming through my mind. I'd never walked out on a stage without Alex beside me.
Wow.
Ever.
Wow.
You know, I mean, of course, there were one-offs here and there, but it was just alone. There was this feeling of, wow, really alone. What is that going to be like? And so my mind was kind of racing. And then when the crowd came in and I walked out and I felt all the love, it just felt worth it, you know. And I had no idea it would feel like that. I had no idea that the crowd would be so connected to me. And the Q&A section, which really is my favorite part of the whole evening, I really get to see their faces. And, you helped me last night. And it's just a really nice moment I get with these fans, and they express themselves. And so
I said this to you last night, that what's so interesting about the way people connect to you is that you are obviously Rush is this enormously successful, huge band for a long, long time, but you're also every fan's secret in a way. Like, their connection to you is so specific. And you saw it with the celebrities. You see how nervous people are around you. And I also think they didn't think they'd ever have this opportunity in their life, especially after Rush played their last show. No one knew if we were going to hear from Geddy in this context again.
It's true, and I do sense from the audience, and that's one of the things, to your earlier point, that I've learned about myself, that I'm very appreciative of their need for closure.
Yeah.
You know, our last gig was August of 2015. And from their perspective, the band ended, and they didn't know if there was any future. And they didn't know Neil was sick.
Yeah.
And that went on for years, 3.5 years. So there was a lot they didn't know about what was going on, and I needed to find a way to inform them without being indiscreet to my friendship, to my responsibilities as to my bandmate, all that. So I sense in the evening, as the evening goes on and as I'm talking about these things, I really feel they need to hear that.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel like mission accomplished in a way.
You know, reading this book, there's so many parts of this that, I would put the book down because I just thought, well, I don't feel like crying at this moment. So I'll just kind of put, but when I'm going through it and there's the things, like, you've done this really nice, and it's a delicate job of telling stories, waxing the mythology of this amazing life and all that, but then you say things. Like, you couple times you talk about grudges, couple times you talk about how you feel and how you remember things and you don't really hold back. And I wasn't sure if that's the kind of book you were going to write.
Right.
But you did. Like you tell the truth in this book.
Well, you know, I said at the beginning, the only person I should embarrass by this book is myself. But I couldn't resist. I mean, that was my motto for a while, but there are a few people, and, you know, like I say in the book, I'm a motherfucker that bears a grudge, and I am.
Yeah.
And so in the telling of my life, I said to myself, what is the point if you're going to play cutesy and hide the truth? If you're going to either bare your soul or you're not going to bare your soul. And it didn't seem to serve me any purpose to be cagey about what I thought. I mean, I just laid it out there. I kept asking myself, what would a reader want to get out of a memoir? And they would want the truth.
Yeah.
And so I just told it as best as I could without being humiliating too many people.
Right. and you also stated facts, so everybody should be able to live with their decisions, right? And how they would have treated you or other things. I think maybe it's one of the reasons why so many people gravitate towards Rush and why it actually works with what you're just talking about is Rush is a journey. Those songs are journeys. And I never felt like hearing them, I'm watching a band give me what they think.
Yeah.
I felt like, oh, we're all doing this insane thing together. And I think you had to do that to understand who you are, especially because when you start the chapter about the Holocaust and your parents, the one shoe at a time thing from your dad, which almost broke me, just that. And because I thought, God, what he did to compartmentalize, that would have been his sign of hope.
Yeah.
Right? Just this little thing.
Can you imagine my mother receiving that shoe? Because she didn't know if he was alive or dead.
Right.
Because the men and women were separated in those camps. Yeah. But no, that whole thing was really important to me. And I said to my publisher right from the beginning that I have to include a chapter on the Holocaust because I owed it to my mom, I owed it to my kids' kids, and I owed it because these witnesses to this horrible thing are gone.
Yeah.
And so if you stop telling the story, you get what you see on the internet now. Yeah. Denial and all kinds of lies. Yeah. And so I felt kind of, I need to do it, but I needed to do it right. I needed to examine it carefully. You can't tell a false narrative. Right. And, you know, so I did the best I could piecing together the trail of crumbs.
It's the one really standout part. It's a really subtle part in the book, but it's the standout part, which is this idea that there's a painting of you at your bar mitzvah. That's a big deal.
Yes.
Why was there a painting of you?
There's a painting because every Jewish boy, after their bar mitzvah, sits for a photograph that they hang proudly on the wall. But my mother was ashamed of my hair, so she would not allow a photograph to be taken of me. And so then she took a photo of me from a year earlier at my cousin's bar mitzvah, and she gave it to an artist to paint me with the shorter hair.
How'd you feel about that then versus now?
Well, I just thought it was ridiculous, of course, then. Yeah. And now it hangs in my library, and I look at it, and I just can't believe it exists. And, you know, the hair, they've really done a job on the hair, making it as tidy as possible for my mother. But it just makes me smile now. Yeah. It's just a nice, warm memory of my crazy mom, you know, and how she really did not like my long hair.
Why do you think you didn't hold a grudge? Maybe you did. But when you got fired from Rush, why do you, like, that's the one part I thought, man, of the one, like, had you held your grudge, this life is different for you, perhaps.
Yes. Yes.
Why did that seem to be okay? Why did you let Alex off the hook?
Well, I love Alex.
Yeah. And you loved him then?
I loved him then. Yeah. And I loved his playing. And we were really good together as players. And I didn't really blame him. I never really thought he had much to do with it. You know, even though I put him on the spot and asked him point blank when I was writing the book, he was quite embarrassed and he wouldn't look me in the eye for a few minutes. But I just never blamed him. And I know it was others. that were conspiring to get me out of that band. And so it is what it is. And then I went on and I had confidence because within a few days I had hooked up with new musicians and we were working more than the New Rush was.
Yeah.
And the New Rush were terrible. So I had great comfort in that fact.
It's important to find those pillars.
That's right. And then John called me and asked me back, and I said, "Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'll do that."
You just know it was a fit. Could you tell it was a special group when you started? Or was it when Neil showed up that it felt?
I think every band thinks they're special.
Yeah.
You know, rightfully or wrongfully. You know, any band out there, any garage band out there thinks they're going to make it, and what they're doing is special. So of course it's naive belief in yourself, and we thought, yeah, man, we're going to do it one day.
But there wasn't much coming out of Toronto at the time. It's not like there wasn't even really an industry. You had to start a label. It's a different, like you had to build a thing that wasn't there before. Where did that come from?
Well, there were a few Toronto bands. There was the great Kensington Market that had some amazing players, the Poppers.
Yeah.
You know, there were a number of bands, of course, and a number of folk artists from Toronto.
And that wave of Jamaican immigration, Jackie Matu, so there was some really good reggae happening here.
So there was a music scene. It was just quite disjointed. But there was no heavy rock scene.
Yeah.
So we were fighting the good fight in our mind, trying to play in bars and get high school gigs. And all through that time, of course, people wanted us to play songs that were recognizable. And we were trying to write our material, which at the time wasn't very good, but it was ours.
Yeah.
And we were quite proud of that.
What I love about the way you tell the story of Rush is it's almost like there was confidence, but there was never certainty. You tried things, maybe you didn't think the record worked. Even we all knew who Rush were. Internally, you guys weren't always sure about the path you were on.
That's a really good observation, I think. And I think it's true because we never wanted to repeat ourselves. It felt like we were cheating somehow. If we had a song that people liked, then we just tried to duplicate that. Yeah. It just felt wrong to every fiber of our instinct. And thankfully, Neil joining the band confirmed those instincts, you know, because he was very much like that. He had a lot of integrity, and he never even wanted to play the same drum fill twice in a song. And so it was like, yeah, but it's really good drum fill, you know. He said, well, we don't have to play it twice, do we? We can do a new one. And I would go, fuck yeah, okay, let's do a new one. And so that pushed me as a player.
Right.
And so we pushed each other, and we all had this, you know, kind of obsession with moving forward. But it wasn't always moving forward because we were so experimental that sometimes we veered off the track. And I'm really thankful that our fans, at least some of them, stuck with us. You know, we would lose fans with every change, but we would gain new ones.
So much of your life and your career has been, protecting's the wrong word, but you're very careful about talking about Neil, and you always have been, because it's just been you and Alex at the forefront for a long time. Yeah. Now in this book, we're learning a little bit more as to maybe why, not just because of the tragedy, but, you know, anxiety, whatever he was dealing, all the real things he was dealing with. Now you get to talk about it, and this is part of your story now. I'm wondering what that's like for you, being able to say his name and tell stories in a way that you didn't used to do.
No, and I hope he wouldn't have been upset about me exposing things about him. But I just feel that, you know, my life and Alex's and Neil's were intertwined. And I could not figure out a way to tell my story without telling their story. Right. You know, sometimes I feel like Alex's narrator. You know? And in a way, I feel like I owed it to our audience to understand the people that I spent my life with. You know, I spent over 40 years working with. And I tried to be as open yet discreet as I could be in all my relationships, even talking about the problems that my wife and I were having on and off for a number of years. You know, wanted to explain what was happening and the difficulties without going into indiscreet details and all that stuff.
You didn't let yourself off the hook when you talked about your relationship with your wife.
No.
That's what I found really interesting, because lots of guys will do a mea culpa, but sometimes I don't believe the reason for it.
Yeah.
And so when I read the book, part of me was like, it's not an apology to Nancy, but there's a lot of, it's, by saying it, you're making it official. And I think it carries different weight with her. Has she read it yet?
No.
Will she?
I don't know. She's so funny. So much of it is about her life. And I tried to do justice to my relationship with her and to her personality, as I did with Alex's, as I did with Neil's. But there was a moment when the first copy of the book came in, and she was looking at it and she was circling it. I think she was afraid of what was in it. And then she took it into her tea house, which is a little space we have in our backyard where she does her reading. She's a voracious reader. And she started it. And then about a chapter and a half in, she went, "What am I doing? This is the very first copy of the book. I'm wrapping this in cellophane and putting it away." I said, "That's your excuse?"
We all cope in our own ways.
Yeah, we all cope. You know, she's a very white girl. She's a really easily embarrassed white girl. But it's interesting because now she knows so much about what's in it, because when I embarked to do this tour, I said, "I'm not doing it alone. You're coming with me, please. Yeah. I would like you to travel with me." She never did that in Rush. She'd come out and do a cameo appearance in certain cities, but she never did it. She was very tired after a week and a half and got sick and had to go home. But she said, "Okay, I get this. This is difficult." But she is in the room when I'm talking about these stories. Yeah. And sometimes I just talk right to her when I'm being asked a question. "I'm sorry, Nance, plug your ears at this part." And she said to me, she said, I appreciate you saying you have regrets about going on the road and leaving me with the burden of raising Julian, and but you don't have to say that. I knew what I was in for, even if it was a bit ouchy.
Yeah. Another thing in the book that really struck me was, and I think a lot of people always thought it was just Neil that would have changed the direction of Rush, whether or not you did stuff, but that Alex didn't want to tour either, or was thinking about not touring.
Yeah, well, he was quite sick.
Yeah, and that to me was a bit of a revelation.
Yeah, and it was really, that meeting we had was probably the worst, most uncomfortable meeting I ever had with Alex and Neil, because Alex had been through a lot physically, and nobody knew this, but his arthritis was really a problem, and he had digestive issues that were quite serious, and so he just had this surgery to correct them all, and he was in recovery when Neil sent this missive to say, "I'm coming through town on my book tour." He was probably talking to you.
Yeah, he was actually. He was. Yeah.
And he said, "We have to get together. I have to have a meeting with you." And I said, "Dude, Al is just out of the hospital. Can't we wait a week or so?" "No, I'm going to be in town. I'm driving up from Montreal and blah, blah, blah." Okay. So that was so unlike him.
Yeah. So you knew something was up.
It was so brusque.
Yeah.
It was really out of character. And so when poor Al walked into the restaurant, and he could barely sit straight. And he's sitting there through dinner like this. And Neil started explaining all the reasons why he didn't really want to tour anymore. And there were good reasons, of course. Yeah. He had lost his first family, and now he had a second family, and he didn't want to fuck that up.
Yeah.
And his heart needed to be with his daughter. Fair enough. But then when he went around the table and he asked Al, and Al, that's the first time I'd heard that too, where Al says, "I don't know how many more tours I have in me. I don't know if this body can do another tour, so I'd like to do it now, while I can do it." And of course, he just looked into Alex's eyes and said, "Fuck."
That was his only out, right?
fuck. He said, I said to myself before coming to this meeting, the only way I will give in to doing a tour is if Alex wants to do it now. And he said, he pulled that fucking lever.
Yeah, right away. How'd that make you feel? Like, you're fucking Geddy Lee, this is your band too.
I know.
And you had no control.
I had no control. I was just an observer.
Yeah.
And I was just feeling all the feels, as they say.
Which is not
Like,
helpful.
holy shit, I'm learning now. Alex, doesn't think he can carry on much longer. And he wants to retire. I'm like, okay, what's happening here? Yeah. And then, of course, in the days afterwards, I got an email from Neil where he described his night after that meeting and how he stormed around his room saying fuck 600 times. And but he made his decision, you know. That's the kind of guy he was. When Alex said that, he got pissed off in his brain, but he accepted it.
Yeah.
And he didn't talk about it again. And he went about planning the next tour. And the next email I got from him was all about what songs you want to play in the next tour. So it was over. Yeah. He had made the decision. He said, I'm not retiring, I'm resigned.
Right.
The different R word.
Right.
Okay, great. And so all I did was think about the tour and try to get it designed and do my job, which was the kind of pivot man for all the audio visuals, and the concept of the tour. And he went about prepping for it. And Alex, thankfully, was feeling better day by day by day. And then as the tour went on, he got stronger and he didn't want to see it end.
Right.
And then suddenly he's thinking, well, my body's healing up. I can play more tours in the future. So he sort of, I think, regretted saying that to Neil at that time. But there was no turning back for Neil.
No. What's your relationship like with resentment?
With who?
Resentment.
Resentment. I have an on and off relationship with resentment. And I mean, you could say bearing a grudge is a kind of resentment. Mm-hmm. And there are some things I cannot let go of. People that did me wrong, I resent that fact. But I think I also make an agreement with myself to be happy and to live life and not let it weigh me down. You know, I just chart it in my little black book.
Yeah.
When someone disappoints me profoundly or something's happened, I just don't forget that. You know? So, but maybe that leads to my mistrust of certain situations, so my radar gets sharper. But I don't let it turn me into a negative dude.
And you do the work too, because I think what I learned even with the Neil thing, you came to understand it, right? And you talked about this. You came to understand his choice and go, of course.
Yeah, it took me a while. After the tour was over, I was full of resentment, I'll be honest. Yeah. And Alex was too. But Alex, you know, as he explained last night, and I asked him for the first time last night, was, you know, how did you get over these things so quickly? He talked about him being shallow and empty.
Yeah. Which I don't believe.
Well, kind of. But I'm not like that. And so I needed to process it. And it wasn't until that conversation I had with him where I reached out to him about 2-3 months after the last gig. Yeah. And we started a dialogue. And when I heard him describe his new life and the joy of being a dad, the joy of being the librarian at Olivia's school. Right. I mean, how could anyone with a fully functional heart not say, okay, he deserves it. So forget all my resentment doesn't amount to a hill of beans.
But if your identity is tied so closely to Rush for so long, and you're obviously young and vibrant and curious and creative, and rock and rollers don't stop playing, right? How do you figure out what you're going to do now?
Yeah, it was hard. And I was not even on the way to figuring it out yet. You know, I was taking a break still, and it was a year later, and Nancy and I are doing this big hike, the Hadrian Wall Path hike, this marvelous, challenging walk on the Scottish-English border. And just before we left for that trip, everything changed because I got that email at the same time Alex and our manager got it. Neil saying I have a brain tumor. And so it changed everything.
Yeah.
You know, just let everything out of your mind and say, okay, now my job now is to help. How can I help? Can I help? And so Alex and I talked, and I pounded that every mile of that walk, thinking and trying to process what had just happened. So my band ended, and then I was okay with the band ending and happy for my partner to have a new life, and then it gets taken from him. Yeah. And he gets a death sentence, essentially. So fuck me.
Yeah.
So Al and I talked, and then our job was to go see him, and then we were saddled with the responsibility of keeping it a secret, right, which I respected. And we've talked about that in the past. Yeah. Everything was different.
I didn't tell you this, but after the Neil passing became public, I guess I'm not shocked because I don't have a whole lot of faith in humanity all the time, but I was a bit stunned by how quickly people got into my messages saying, hey, if they're looking for a drummer, can you connect me? And I remember thinking, what are you not realizing about the human experience? Of course I would never bring that up to you, but what the fuck is going on?
Oh yeah, I heard from all kinds. That was a very weird moment.
Can't even imagine.
Yeah. My little black book got filled up really quickly.
People you thought were friends. People,
yeah. I was like, whoa, that's just so inappropriate right now. You know, dude, wait 2 months.
Right.
At least 2 months, if ever, you know. Yeah, it still happens, you know, now that, you know, the clickbait freaks are out there talking about Alex and I getting a new drummer and starting Rush again, you know.
We can thank Paul McCartney for that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I would never say a bad word about Paul McCartney because he is an amazing person.
It's incredible, 2 big moments in your grief. Once Robert Plant helps you, and then the next time Paul McCartney helps you.
I know.
Like
well, that's weird.
Two of the most important ever to do this.
Yeah, no, it's true. He said, because Jackie had just passed away like a few days earlier. And I said, I'm not coming to the show. We're too fucked up. Mm-hmm. He said, nope. Look, I've been through grief. I've lost people close to me. And I've learned you have to get back to life. Getting back to life sooner is better than later. Mm-hmm. And he's right. But it's not always so easy. But he was right. Yeah. And we went, and it was amazing. Their kindness, I will not forget. It's funny, talking to Kim Thayil the other day, and we were talking about loss. And, you know, he was so wonderful and conceptual, and he's really quite a deep-thinking man, a lovely man. And in the moment, talking about my losses, I had totally forgotten about the profound loss that he had experienced in Chris Cornell. Yeah. After the show, it was blatantly obvious to me I was being, you know, one-sided in that conversation, and I should have been more empathetic to that fact. But I think, you know, a lot of these bands like mine, like Rush, have lost people, and their reaction is very interesting, and it tells a lot about themselves, you know.
You know, last time you and Alex were at this table, you talked about, you know, do we go back? How do we do things? And you said, but you've learned the value of time, right? Mm-hmm. But it's been a couple years since that. Where are you now in your head?
Well, I've not been very good at apportioning my time lately.
You're back on
because
the road.
I'm doing too effing much. You know, careful what you wish for. I filled my time with projects that were different. Why did I do that? It's because the idea of going back to a band situation after 40 years with Neil plus and almost 50 years with Alex was claustrophobic to me. I couldn't do it. Just like I couldn't go down to my studio and sit there and start writing songs. I felt like, you know, what did Rush stand for? It stood for not standing still, you know, to explore different parts of ourselves, different parts of our musical selves. And now here I was. Am I just going to join another band and go back and do the same thing? It just felt inappropriate and claustrophobic and redundant. So I thought, I'm going to embrace new opportunities. I like writing. I liked writing the big, beautiful book of bass, and I learned something about myself and how, you know, being a control freak, you can control every word when you write.
That comes up in the book a few times, and I was actually quite amazed that Alex left you that voice note, recorded that part where he tells you, he's like, he didn't feel engaged in the band in some of the process, and that was news to you.
Yeah, no, it was news to me. So I enjoy the creative conversation with myself and not having to be reliant on bandmates.
Yeah.
And so that led to this book, and that led to the TV adventure. It's like, okay, now I'm going to pretend that I'm doing your job and interviewing. That's not so easy. I have proper respect. Proper respect.
It's a thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the thing. It's a whole different mindset. And, you know, even if it's just sitting in a conversation like this and knowing when to nod your head and when to listen and when to pipe up.
And just competing at possible avenues, trying to, there's a whole, it's a craft.
Yeah, so it's a fine art of conversation and listening. So those things were great for me, and I don't regret doing them at all. And now I have this book tour, which is a new adventure for me, and it's been incredibly gratifying. And having these different guest hosts has been so enlightening. And I know they're interviewing me, but I'm getting to know them through their questions and our little time backstage. And I feel, again, like with the book, I'm connecting with new people or people I knew, but there's another level to our relationship after they've gone through this with me.
Yeah.
And so when that's complete, it's time to take stock again, and Nancy and I will scoot away, and I will hike the hills of some far-off land with my new 800 millimeter lens, try to grab the perfect shot of a pink robin or a superb lyrebird or something of that nature.
And then will you send Alex a text and say, let's do something?
Likely.
Yeah. Before we wrap it, I could talk to you forever. I love the fact that Steve Shutt helped stop you from getting bullied, which is pretty incredible.
And he didn't even realize it.
He didn't know. No. I also love the fact that your most successful single is Take Off, which we did a thing called Top Shelf, where we declared it's the greatest Canadian album of all time. Is the Strange Brew soundtrack. People didn't know that you went to school with Rick.
Yeah.
Right?
Ricky
Yeah.
Moranis. Yeah.
What do you remember from making that record?
Oh, it was great fun.
Yeah.
You know, he called me up. He said, "We're making this record. You know, do you want to come down and sing a part?" I said, "Sure." And I brought Nancy and I brought my young son. And it was just so much fun. And we basically just scratched the words together on the spot. You know, okay, so there was a producer there. I can't remember his name. Apologies. And they were all sitting around and said, "Why don't you sing Take Off to the Great Night? Take Off. It's a beauty way to go," okay? Or something like that. And I said, "Okay." And I just went in and we just bullshitted around the mic and I sang the parts in very short order and that was it. I had a hit single.
When we shared that online, like Ben Stiller commented, everybody started to comment about how impactful Strange Brew and Bob and Doug McKenzie and that record were to them.
Really?
Yeah. Like it's quite a thing.
It's funny. That's really funny.
It's quite a thing.
But Ricky was in my class every year from kindergarten to grade 6. And I didn't see him for many years. And then I was backstage at the Junos one day and he came up to me, "Hey," we reconnected. And he said, "Do you need any jokes when you're going up there?" I said, "Jokes? No, I don't think so." And then he was a DJ for a while, and then he ended up in Second City, and the rest is sort of his history. You know?
I still, my favorite bit of revenge is you didn't have to do anything was when Jan Wenner said, "From Toronto."
Yeah.
You know, and I probably watch that clip once a month because I have never in my entire 32 odd years doing this for a living seen a reaction like that.
Yeah.
In a place like that. You obviously didn't expect that.
No, I was blown away.
Yeah.
And Somebody sent me a clip of Nancy's reaction the other day.
For our thing? Oh,
Yeah, she covered her face. And she was like, what's happening right now? It was pretty remarkable. And I'm glad it happened for more than just the obvious reasons that it felt great, but I think it helped us get up on the podium and feel like we deserved to be there.
right.
Which, you know, we had an odd relationship with the whole Hall of Fame business because people kept suggesting for so many years that we should be in the Hall of Fame. You know, even Colbert joked about it. It's the fact that you're not in the Hall of Fame bullshit or whatever he said.
Yeah.
And so we had a very negative approach to it.
Yeah.
And then when we finally did get informed that we were going to be inducted, we were still cynical.
Yeah.
But all cynicism left the room with that moment that you're describing.
It's a really powerful moment.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about this experience for you, just from the outside, is I feel like you are seeing your life in a way that you had no idea it existed.
Yes, and sometimes it's like, what have I done? You know, I'm all out there. I feel like it's, you know, blah.
Yeah, you can't hide behind Rush.
Yeah. So I'm kind of getting ready to peel some of that back and go into hiding for a while. Sometimes I wake up and go, feel very exposed today.
Yeah.
You know, should I just shut up for a while? I think I need to shut up for a while.
But this is a good thing, because I think you're right. I think it's one of those moments where your audience actually needs closure. They need it. Most bands don't need, like, we love other bands who we lose members and it's heartbreaking, but it's not the same thing. This is a different thing.
I mean, look at them. They're showing up for a guy, a 70-year-old man talking, you know. I have no bass in my hand.
Yeah.
There's no music, really, but...
We were standing beside Alex last night when, behind the curtain, before his name got scribbled on the screen.
Right.
You should have seen the smile on his face when the reaction happened. He was just because Chris and him started laughing, but you could genuinely see that, and I don't know if he thought, am I ever going to get to have that reaction again? Am I ever going to get that? And that reaction, and then when he walked past the curtain,
Yeah.
when it got louder, it was just really nice for him to have that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were talking about all these gags we could have done.
Yeah.
And, you know, I woke up in the middle of the night as I do, and I went, oh, I can't do that. He needs his moment.
Yeah.
He
Totally.
needs to feel what I've been feeling.
Yeah. And it was great. It was perfect.
Yeah.
Man, it's so good to see you.
So good to be here, and thank you for helping me out last night. Thank you, man.
Always thank you.